So let's get into this. Let's get into this a little bit here, and we're going to talk about now how do we decide or determine what we want to be known for. Okay. Now, here's the thing about this. You can't actually know what you want to be known for until you know what you're known for now, if that makes sense. You have to be able to let people, you have to know what you want to do, where you want to go. No one else can decide that for you. And so, to help you understand that, you have to first become more self aware. Okay. So, how do we do that? In the book, I define three separate ways to be able to do this. First, there's this thing called introspection. Okay. If you do this correctly, you'll learn two things about yourself. One, you'll learn more about your values. What are the things in life that you value? By the way, when you get into your career, if things start to feel out of whack, it's most likely some kind of values thing. You just haven't defined what that is, so you don't know what the values thing is that's interfering with you. Okay. Also, in introspection, we will identify emotions. Okay. And what I mean by that is in certain situations, we feel certain things. We just don't recognize that that's what it is in most cases. So introspection helps us with our values and it helps us understand our emotions. And the reason that the emotions piece is super important is because you need to tie it to your actions. And the only way you can do that is through observation. Okay. You have to pay attention to how you act in certain situations. So for example, when I first started going through personal branding exercises, 5 or 6 years ago, one of the things that I did during introspection was I started to pay attention to myself and how I was reacting or acting in certain situations. And I noticed by paying attention that there were meetings that I would sit in where people were discussing problems that they couldn't get their hands around. And because I am just a naturally, and I figured this out through the next piece that we'll talk about, but because I'm a natural thinker, strategic thinker, I would start getting antsy. And it wasn't because I was like nervous in the meeting, but it was me internally telling myself to stand up and take charge of that meeting. Because in a lot of cases, we were just going around and around in circles and we weren't moving anywhere. But I started to pay attention to those things. And when you do that and you can recognize in yourself that time when it's like, okay, I have to take action, that's when you start to really live out what your personal brand is. So we have to pay attention through observation, but there's another thing that we can do that can be very eye-opening to help us become more self-aware and understand our brand. And it's an exercise in the book, which is to talk to trusted advisors. This was super eye-opening for me. In the book, I give you an email template to send out to people, but essentially you go to people whose opinion matters to you and you ask them about yourself. Like, what do you know me for? What do you think I'm good at? Where do you think I excel? Those types of questions. And people will give you the feedback that you need in order to be able to still continue your journey of becoming more self-aware and grow your brand. The next piece, and this is probably the piece most people focus on, is assessments. So they'll go out and we'll take assessments, and assessments are great for understanding two things: your skills or talents, and then also your traits. Your traits, interestingly enough, can define your behaviors, which tie back up here that says if you're not paying attention to your behaviors and the traits that help you exhibit those behaviors, you could actually be creating a brand for yourself that people don't find appealing. So you have to know what that is. So I talk about in the book, there's several different assessments you can take. There's one called 16 Personalities, which is actually really good. It is free. Well, at least it's free to get an overview. Then you got to pay to get a detailed report, but it's totally worth the detailed report. Then there's the one everybody knows about, Strengths Finders. There's also one called Stand Out, which I really like. And then there's another one I talk about, which is called Fascination Advantage. And this one looks at you in a completely different way than these other ones. These other ones are more internally focused. This one is more external. So it's how do people see you? How do people view you? So if you're looking for kind of two different ways to look at it, I would select one of these and then take this one as well. And it will help you understand those skills and traits and more about yourself. So then if we go back here, once we become more self-aware, the next thing we want to do is we want to start to